Dan Hibiki has won fans the world over, earning stardom not just from his skills, but from his incredible good looks and personality.
Dan is Street Fighter's joke character. He's basically a worse version of Ryu. Although he is able to create a fireball, it's weak and dissipates quickly. His Dan kicks and DP are clumsy and ineffective. It feels like he's struggling with the technique. His unique Psycho style is a poor mimicry of the Shotokan karate practiced by Ryu and Ken. Dan is actually a parody of Ryo from King of Fighters, a character who's heavily inspired by Ryu. Dan's most powerful technique is his legendary taunt, a super which consists entirely of him jumping around and taunting. Dan oozes arrogance. He thinks he's the best that ever lived, despite being incompetent. Dan's wacky antics and comic relief have made him a fan favourite. Although more modern interpretations play up how pathetic he is, in the Alpha games there were some more heroic elements to his character. Dan's backstory is actually quite dark. Dan's father Go was a martial artist who fought against Sagat. During the fight, Go blinded Sagat in one of his eyes. This led Sagat to show no mercy and kill Go. This fight is the reason why Sagat wears an eye patch. Dan's first appearance was as a secret character in Alpha 1. Dan set out to avenge his father, seeking to defeat Sagat and restore his father's honour. After some travelling, Dan was able to track down Sagat. Sagat didn't know who Dan was, but remembered his father. Sagat told Dan that Go got what he deserved. In the subsequent fight, Dan defeats Sagat, getting his revenge. With his Psycho style proven strong, Dan decided to set up a dojo to teach it and become famous. Apparently he did this to honour his father's legacy, although I'm not clear on how. As you can tell, Dan's portrayal in Alpha isn't anywhere near as pathetic as in later games. He swears revenge on the man who killed his father and manages to get it. It's worth mentioning that in later comics, this is somewhat retconned. Some sources imply that Sagat threw the fight because he was remorseful about killing Go. This clearly conflicts with the games. In Alpha 1, upon learning that Dan is the son of the man who took out his eye, Sagat vows to get revenge on him as well. He clearly shows no remorse for what he did and is still out for blood. There's a huge disparity in the way this is portrayed between the comics and the games. In my opinion, the games will always trump the comic in terms of canon. I treat the games as primary sources and anything outside of that as a secondary source, disregarding anything that conflicts with the games. This is a matter of opinion. Sagat throwing the fight would make sense with how incompetent Dan is in later games, but it clearly wasn't the original intention. That's Dan's story in Alpha, and about the last time that Dan succeeds at anything. The rest of Dan's story focuses mostly on his dojo, which is failing. He only seems to have two students, Blanca and Sakura. Neither of them actually use Psycho style. Both of them treat Dan as a close friend, with Dan being pretty much the only person in Street Fighter to call Blanca by his real name, Jimmy. Outside of this close friendship, his story in the more recent games is minimal. In Street Fighter 4, Dan enters the tournament to try to advertise his dojo. He also records an advert, but forgets to actually mention where his dojo is. This results in his dojo failing and Dan remaining broke. In Street Fighter 5, Dan sees a Blanca-chan doll and gets the idea to copy it to promote his dojo. After begging Sakura for the money to fly to Brazil, Dan visits Blanca and then decides to create his own line of dolls. There's an interesting tidbit in Dan's arcade ending. After you defeat G, it's revealed that Dan actually lost, and him winning the fight was in his imagination. This throws Dan's other victories into question. I'm going to assume this is mostly a joke and not dwell too much on this, because it's a huge rabbit hole. That's pretty much all of Dan's story in the mainline games. Dan starts out as a tragic hero on a quest for revenge. He gets this revenge very early in his arc. After that point, he becomes a pathetic failing martial arts instructor who's desperate to become famous and spread his Psycho style. Despite being portrayed as weak, he was able to defeat Sagat, so he's not completely useless. There's a stark difference between the Dan of the Alpha games and the Dan of 4 and 5. In Alpha, Dan is a self-taught martial artist who seeks out the King of Muay Thai to avenge his father. It's possible that he neglected his training after getting revenge, leading to his drop in strength. In his mind, by defeating Sagat, he proves himself the strongest. In the later games, he no longer has this quest and has become absorbed in his egotistical hunt for fame. He's incompetent at even the most basic of tasks and is struggling for money. He becomes a pure comic relief character. I think this is part of what makes him endearing. The fact he's struggling to succeed in this world full of superhuman characters makes him more relatable. Although he can seem selfish, His naivety and close friendship with Blanca and Sakura show his good-natured side. So in answer to the question, Dan is first a tragic hero, and then a pathetic loser. Over time, his quest for revenge has moved further into the past. Modern Dan is pure comic relief with no strong motivation or goal. Dan's story is interesting. His main conflict gets resolved almost immediately. You don't see this often. In my opinion, Dan's story is one of stagnation. It's what happens when the hero completes his quest too quickly and is stuck with nothing to do. He has no reason to keep up his training and truly become the strongest outside of vanity. Without the quest for revenge to guide him, Dan just wants easy money and fame. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and I'll see you all next time.